Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Vineyard Underground podcast. This is your host and viticulturist, Fritz Westover. And joining me today is my friend and repeat guest, Kelly Mulville of Paicines Ranch. Beautiful ranch. I've been out to visit Kelly many times. And he is joined by Newt Wimer, who specializes in product development for agriculture. And we're going to discuss specifically one of our most perplexing problems we see in the vineyard, which are voles and other vertebrate pests. So listen in as we talk about damage control strategies for these unwelcome vineyard guests. Okay, joining me now from California are Kelly Mulville and Newt Wimer. Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to hang out with me on the podcast today.
Thanks, Fritz.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. You bet. Okay, so Newt, I'm going to start with you. This is your first time on the podcast. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your work, and how you got involved in developing solutions for small vertebrate pests?
Yeah, so my background is product development. My family and friends, everybody's around growing up, we have a extensive history in that. And the fast forward to now with the vertebrae, we were working on airport equipment, and one of my farmer friends who has a large ranch needed work done and ground for gophers, and one thing led to another, and now here we are.
Okay, were you working on vertebrate pests in airports? Is that what you said, in different locations outside of that?
No, it was one of those things where we were doing another project, and it's going to be worth millions and change the world, and then a buddy needed a favor on the side, and it ended up being the technology we learned by doing that was incredible, and ended up being the actual biggest thing we've ever been involved in. And we switched gears and started focusing on our new cryo technology for vertebrae.
All right. Well, we'll definitely dig into that here down the way in this conversation. But spoiler alert, we're going to talk about new technologies, right? Before we get into that, and thank you, Newt, for being here again, I wanted to, Kelly, have you just briefly introduce yourself. You've been on the podcast before. I want you to tell listeners why you specifically wanted to talk about this topic, because remember the last time I visited you, this episode was kind of your idea. You were having an issue with voles, and honestly, it was one of the worst that I'd ever seen. And I had seen some. I'm sure there's various levels of damage caused across California and other areas. What prompted this interest in trying to help other growers? I think that's what I like about you. You said, we should do a podcast on this because other growers could benefit from your experience. So first of all, tell us about yourself and then tell us why we're here today.
Yes, so I'm vineyard director at Paicines Ranch, central coast of California, inland a little bit over the hill to the east of Salinas. And when I first took on this job, which was to basically create a new vineyard design, one of the things that the owner, Sally Calhoun, and I both agreed on is that we wanted to be open about all of our learning. And so sharing our learning is a big focus for us. And we do that in numerous ways. So when we had this issue come up with voles in particular, of course, we deal with ground squirrels and gophers and things like that. But the voles were the thing that kind of really kicked our butt. And so we've delved into that quite a bit and learned quite a bit about that. But so that was the reason that, and by no means have we figured this out, but that was one of the reasons why I wanted to share what we're learning to hopefully avoid the kind of damage that we saw. And
yeah,
as bad as ours was, I know that there's people who lost hundreds of acres and went bankrupt over voles last year. So we're not in that state. So
how long does it take from the time of a complete girdle of the trunk until you start to see symptoms or vine decline or death?
It was surprisingly slow. And some of the things that we thought were dead actually survived. Some of the things that we thought were not that bad died. And so it wasn't real clear cut. We actually had Mark Greenspan come out just to give us a different perspective, because them it being our vineyard, we wanted to save as much as we could, but we also didn't want to waste time with basically vines that were not going to make it. And the thing was that, and Mark probably had more experience with seeing vole damage than we did. But the thing that was surprising is some of the vines that are, in general, they're not completely girdled. They're just partially girdled. And so there's enough vascular tissue to make up for that and pull off a full crop again. But so you'd probably really have to get down with almost like a hand lens or something and to really see it. But some of the stuff did die pretty quick, but some of it took the entire season and even into this season for us to see the actual damage.
One concern a grower might have about that is if you're in a colder climate, not really where you're in a more, moderate climate, but in a cold climate, sometimes those plastic tubes can warm up in the winter and deacclimate the winter hardiness of the vine tissues. And so I'm just going to throw that out there in case someone's listening and has vole problems, but happen to be in a cold climate. Could be a little risky to leave them on in the winter time, but I think where you are, probably you'd be okay.
On that note too, at the protecting the trunks, and we dealt with some citrus growers on voles specifically, and it's a good thing to know that, like Kelly was saying, the ones that burrow, they'll you can't tell they're there, like you cannot see them, and they'll be hiding behind, like when they put the milk cartons or other types of blockers around the trunk, anything that you can't see through, you think everything's fine, and you lift it up and it's girdled. I don't mean like girdled like it looks like a beaver went to it. It's just completely, it's just below the ground level. And we went on one ranch and they didn't even know it, and almost half their orchard was toast. Like they had no there's no signs of it until they lifted up their little milk cartons and looked underneath and saw that they're girdled. And even if the cartons are not on there, on smaller, younger trees, if you don't go look at the base very closely, the telltale sign is you have a tiny hole, one little hole by the trunk, and that's it. And you think, oh, it's just a little hole. But then you get your finger and you kind of break it back, and there'll be like a donut-shaped hole around it, and under that, they girdle the whole tree.
What's your strategy moving forward, Kelly? You going to try and use multiple approaches, and what do you think you'll go with? And it doesn't have to be the right answer, because I know it's an ongoing project.
It is. And the thing that we've done recently, because so really until last year, voles were not an issue for us, but the ongoing issues are squirrels and gophers. And when you think about vineyards and a lot of the places where we're growing vines, we're creating an oasis for burrowing mammals. And then we draw them in and then we kill them. So just thinking through that and looking at our costs for gopher and squirrel control, we decided, we looked into the economics of it. We have already buried on 3 sides of the vineyard. We just have one small section left to go. We've buried some wire mesh. It's hardware cloth, so it's 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. We've buried that down 3.5 feet all the way around the vineyard. And so then above that, so that's just sticking out like about 4 to 6 inches.
Okay, is this the perimeter of the vineyard?
This is the perimeter of the vineyard.
So this is like an underground fence for voles.
It is an underground fence for, I'm not sure, I think it will keep out voles actually, but I'm not sure how many are coming in from outside.
Right.
But so we've already seen a dramatic decrease in the number of gophers.
Okay, this is more for gophers, is your
right?
Okay,
right. And then we are going to put about a 2-foot chicken wire fence on top of that with an electric hot wire, and that is for the squirrels. So basically, we will hopefully have put a significant dent in the 2 most problematic by labor-wise.
Okay, and let's talk about the damage they do, because we've talked mostly about voles. What is your primary concern with gophers in terms of damage or nuisance?
The primary concern is because they're root eaters, is that they basically will underground, they'll eat the roots. It's not such a big deal on a mature vine, but on a young vine, they can wipe out the entire vine very quickly, actually. It's like 2 bites, and they've taken out the whole root system.